I was released from the hospital a day early, and when I came home, I saw my husband and his mistress in our bed. I left without a word, blocked all the cards, and changed the locks. But then something happened that no one expected. The story I'm going to tell is based on fiction and does not reflect real events. Enjoy listening. Clara had been released from the hospital a day ahead of schedule, a small victory after a minor but draining surgery. The doctors, delighted with her rapid recovery, sent her home with warm smiles, a list of medications, and strict instructions to rest and avoid stress. Eager to surprise her husband, Nathan, she decided not to call ahead. After days in the sterile, fluorescent-lit hospital ward, Clara longed for the comfort of their cozy apartment, the soft glow of the living room lamp, the faint scent of vanilla from her favorite candles, the reassuring embrace of Nathan. She imagined a quiet evening together, perhaps curled up on the couch with a glass of wine, sharing stories and reconnecting after her ordeal. She pictured his face lighting up at her unexpected return. How terribly wrong she was. The taxi pulled up to her building as the late afternoon sun dipped low, casting a golden hue over the quiet street. Clara paid the driver, her voice soft with gratitude, and carefully lifted her small bag of belongings, her body still tender from the surgery. She climbed the familiar steps to her apartment, her heart lifting with each one. Her key turned smoothly in the lock, and she stepped into the entryway, expecting the familiar sounds of home. But an eerie silence greeted her, heavy and unnatural. Normally Nathan would be working from home at this hour, his voice a gentle hum from his office as he took calls or typed away at his desk. Today, the apartment felt lifeless, as if it were holding its breath. Clara set her bag down by the door and moved into the living room, her steps slow and deliberate. The room was empty, but signs of Nathan's presence were scattered about. A stack of papers strewn across the coffee table, a half-empty mug of coffee sitting cold beside his laptop, a jacket carelessly draped over the arm of the couch. Her stomach growled, a sharp reminder of the bland hospital meals she'd barely touched. She considered heading to the kitchen to make a sandwich, but something, an instinct, a quiet unease, drew her down the hallway toward their bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the dim corridor. As she pushed it open, the sight before her seared itself into her memory, a wound that would take years to heal. There, in their bed, the one they'd chosen together at a furniture store years ago, where they'd shared countless nights of laughter, love, and whispered promises, was Nathan, tangled in the sheets with another woman. The world around Clara seemed to freeze. Her heart pounded in her chest, her breath caught in her throat, and her eyes locked onto the scene, unable to look away. A single thought pulsed through her mind, relentless and disorienting. This isn't real. This can't be happening. Nathan was laughing softly, murmuring something to the woman, his face relaxed and carefree, oblivious to Clara's presence. Then his eyes met hers. His expression shifted in an instant, from casual intimacy to raw, unfiltered panic. He froze, his body stiffening like an animal caught in a trap. The woman beside him noticed Clara, let out a startled gasp, and scrambled to pull the blanket over herself, her face flushed with embarrassment. Clara didn't scream. She didn't cry or demand answers. She didn't hurl accusations or collapse in despair. Inside, something broke, a fragile thread of trust and love that had tethered her to Nathan. In its place, a cold, hollow void settled, numbing her emotions. Her love, her trust, her sense of safety, All seemed to dissolve, replaced by an icy resolve. Without a word, she turned and walked out of the bedroom, her movements mechanical. She passed through the living room, past the scattered papers and cold coffee, and out the front door, letting it close softly behind her. Nathan didn't follow. He remained in their bed, with his mistress stunned into silence. He'd expected a dramatic confrontation, tears, shouting, a scene he could manipulate to his advantage. But Clara's silence was a force of its own, louder and more powerful than any words could have been. Outside, the crisp autumn air hit her like a shock, sharp and cleansing. It felt as though it was washing away the betrayal, the pain, the ugliness of what she'd just witnessed. The cool breeze carried the faint scent of fallen leaves, and for a moment it grounded her, pulling her back from the edge of despair. Her legs moved on their own, carrying her down the street, though she had no destination in mind. She just needed to go, to escape, to put as much distance as possible between herself and the man who'd shattered her world. Her hands trembled as she pulled out her phone and dialed her best friend, Rachel. Rachel wasn't just a friend. She was Clara's anchor, her confidant, the one person who'd always been there through life's highs and lows. More importantly, Rachel was a brilliant lawyer, known for her sharp mind and fierce loyalty. "Rachel, it's me," Clara said, her voice shaky but controlled, as if she were holding herself together by sheer will. "Clara, you're out of the hospital? How are you feeling?" Rachel's voice was warm, but concern crept in as she sensed the strain in Clara's tone. "I'm out," Clara replied. "I need to see you, it's urgent." "What's wrong? Are you okay?" Rachel asked, her worry deepening. "No, I'm not," Clara said, her voice breaking slightly. "Can I come over?" "Of course," Rachel said without hesitation. "Come now, I'll be waiting." Clara flagged down another taxi and gave Rachel's address, her hands still trembling as she settled into the back seat. As the city passed by the window, people hurrying along sidewalks, cars weaving through traffic, she stared blankly, trying to block out the storm of emotions threatening to engulf her. The image of Nathan and the woman burned in her mind, but she pushed it away, focusing on the rhythm of the city outside. Tears stung her eyes, but she held them back, determined to stay strong, at least until she reached Rachel. She couldn't afford to break, not yet. Rachel was waiting at her apartment door when Clara arrived, her face a mix of concern and warmth. One look at Clara's pale complexion and trembling hands, and Rachel pulled her into a tight, comforting hug. "Come in," she said softly, guiding Clara inside. "Tell me everything when you're ready." Rachel's apartment was a sanctuary, bright and airy, filled with tall bookshelves, vibrant green plants, and soft, colorful throw pillows that gave it a sense of warmth and safety. She led Clara to the plush couch in the living room, handed her a steaming mug of chamomile tea, and sat beside her, close enough to offer comfort, but giving her space to breathe. For a long time, Clara couldn't speak. The words felt too heavy, too raw, as if saying them out loud would make the betrayal real. Rachel waited patiently, her presence a quiet, steady reassurance. Finally, Clara took a deep breath, her hands wrapped tightly around the warm mug. She began to speak, her voice trembling as she recounted her early discharge, her excitement to surprise Nathan, and the devastating scene she'd walked in on. She described the moment in halting, painful detail, the way Nathan's laughter had stopped, the way the woman had gasped, the way her own heart had seemed to stop beating. Each word felt like a knife, cutting deeper as she relived the betrayal. Rachel listened in silence, her eyes reflecting a mix of deep empathy and barely contained anger. When Clara finished, Rachel leaned forward and wrapped her in another hug, holding her tightly. "I'm so sorry, Clara," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "This is unimaginable, but you're stronger than this pain. You're going to get through it, and I'll be with you every step of the way." Clara's tears finally broke free, and she sobbed into Rachel's shoulder, letting out the anguish she'd been holding in. The tears came in waves, raw and unrelenting, as if they could wash away the hurt. Rachel held her, stroking her back gently, giving her the space to grieve. When the sobs subsided, Rachel spoke again, her voice gentle but firm. "What do you want to do next?" Clara wiped her eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, Rachel. I just want this to be over." "It will be," Rachel said with unwavering conviction. "But you need to take control now. You can't let him keep hurting you. You need to protect yourself, your heart, your home, your future." Clara looked up, meeting Rachel's steady, determined gaze. "The apartment's in my name," she said, a flicker of resolve in her voice. "We've almost paid off the mortgage." "That's our starting point," Rachel replied, her eyes lighting up with purpose. "Tomorrow morning, we'll secure your finances and your home. We'll block his access to your accounts and change the locks. You deserve to feel safe in your own space again." Clara felt a wave of gratitude wash over her, easing the ache in her chest. "Thank you, Rachel," she whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "Don't be ridiculous," Rachel said with a warm, reassuring smile. "You're my best friend. We're in this together. Now, try to get some rest. Tomorrow's a new day, and we've got a plan to execute." Clara settled into Rachel's guest room, sinking into the soft bed with its crisp, clean sheets. But sleep was elusive. Her mind replayed the scene in the bedroom, Nathan's shocked face, the stranger in her bed, the way the air had seemed to thicken with betrayal. She wondered how long he'd been deceiving her, how many lies he'd woven into their life together. Their years of marriage, the shared dreams, the promises of forever, felt like a cruel mirage. She thought of the moments they'd laughed together, planned their future, built a home. Had it all been a lie? The question gnawed at her, but one thing was certain: she wouldn't let Nathan manipulate her any longer. The next morning, Clara woke with a quiet, steely determination. The shock of the previous day had settled into a clear, focused resolve. She wasn't a victim. She was a woman ready to reclaim her life. Over a simple breakfast of toast, fresh fruit, and strong coffee in Rachel's sunny kitchen, she called her bank. Her voice was steady, professional, as she instructed the operator to freeze her credit cards and revoke Nathan's access to their joint accounts. Each action felt like a brick in the wall she was building to protect herself. She knew Nathan would be furious when he discovered he'd been cut off. But that was no longer her concern. His choices had consequences, and she was done paying for them. Next, Clara turned her attention to the apartment. It had once been her sanctuary, a place she'd poured her heart into decorating, choosing the perfect shade of blue for the walls, arranging photos of their travels, selecting furniture that felt like them. Now, it was tainted, a painful reminder of Nathan's betrayal. But it was hers, legally and rightfully, and she wouldn't let him take it from her. She found a locksmith online and arranged for them to come that afternoon. "I need it done quickly and discreetly," she told the dispatcher over the phone. "Install the most secure locks you have, please." Rachel drove her back to the apartment. the city passing by in a blur of honking cars and bustling pedestrians. Clara's hands trembled slightly as they approached the building, but she steadied herself, determined to see this through. Inside, she avoided looking at the bedroom, focusing instead on gathering Nathan's belongings. She packed his clothes, shirts neatly folded, jeans rolled tightly, his shoes, his toiletries, and even his favorite watch, which she found on the nightstand. She included his documents, passport, driver's license, insurance papers, ensuring he had everything he needed. She wasn't hiding anything or seeking revenge. She simply wanted him out of her life, cleanly and completely. The locksmith arrived promptly, a middle-aged man with a no-nonsense demeanor. He worked efficiently, removing the old locks and installing new, high-security ones that gleamed with promise. When he handed Clara the new keys, she felt a surge of relief and empowerment. "You're all set now, ma'am," he said with a nod. "No one's getting in without these." Clara thanked him, paid, and closed the door behind him. Standing alone in the apartment, she took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her actions. She'd taken back her space, her sanctuary. Dragging Nathan's packed suitcases to the hallway outside, she left them neatly by the door. Let him come for them. Let him know he was no longer welcome here. That evening, Nathan returned home from work, confident and composed. He was certain Clara would be waiting, ready to forgive him after a tearful apology. He'd rehearsed his speech. It was a mistake, a fleeting lapse, nothing serious. He inserted his key into the lock, but it wouldn't turn. Frowning, he tried again, harder this time. Nothing. Confusion turned to irritation, then to anger. He knocked, then pounded on the door, shouting her name. "Clara, open the door! We need to talk!" No response. He called her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Then he saw his suitcases in the hallway, his belongings packed and discarded. The realization hit him like a blow. Clara had changed the locks. She'd shut him out, physically and emotionally. Rage surged through him. Nathan, who prided himself on always being in control, was now powerless. He banged on the door, his shouts echoing in the hallway, drawing curious glances from neighbors. The charming, polished man they knew was gone, replaced by someone frantic, unraveling. Defeated, he slumped against the door, his head in his hands, grappling with the reality that he'd underestimated Clara. Her silence was her strength, and it left him shaken to his core. Days later, through mutual friends, Clara learned a devastating truth. Nathan had been consulting a lawyer before her surgery, planning to divorce her once she'd paid off most of the apartment's mortgage. His plan was cold and calculated. Wait until her money was tied up in their shared home, then claim half under the law. The revelation hit her like a punch, deepening the wound of his betrayal, but it also hardened her resolve. He hadn't just cheated. He'd been scheming to exploit her trust for his own gain. In Rachel's office one evening, Clara shared the news as they sat across from each other, the soft glow of twilight filtering through the large windows. "He was lying to my face," Clara said, her voice steady but laced with a quiet bitterness. "Telling me he loved me, that we were fine, while he was planning how to take everything." Rachel shook her head, her expression a mix of disgust and sympathy. "And I bet he was feeding his mistress Jessica the same lies. Promising her a divorce was just around the corner." Clara nodded, her eyes distant as she processed the betrayal. "Friends overheard him saying it was almost settled with me, that it was just a matter of formalities." "What a despicable man," Rachel said, her voice low with anger. "I always thought there was something off about him. Too smooth, too calculated. But this is beyond low." Clara sat quietly, her mind sifting through years of memories. Every kind word, every gesture of affection from Nathan now felt like a carefully placed piece in his manipulative game. "He thought I'd beg him to stay," she said, her voice tinged with defiance. "That I'd be so broken, I'd let him walk away with half of everything." "But you turned the tables," Rachel said, a proud smile breaking through. "You showed him who's in charge." Clara managed a small, determined smile. "And he's furious about it." "Good," Rachel said firmly. "He deserves every bit of it. But we're not done yet. We need to file for divorce and make sure he can't touch a thing." Clara nodded, her resolve strengthening. "I'm ready. I want this over as quickly as possible." Rachel pulled out a folder with prepared documents, her efficiency a testament to her expertise. "Here's the draft petition for divorce," she said, sliding the papers across the desk. "It covers everything: dissolution of the marriage, division of assets, and alimony. Take a look." Clara reviewed the documents, impressed by Rachel's thoroughness. Every detail was accounted for, every potential loophole closed. "This is perfect," she said, handing them back. "Thank you, Rachel. You're saving me." "Don't thank me," Rachel said warmly. "You're my best friend, and I won't let that creep hurt you any more than he already has." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Rachel's assistant entered with a stack of papers for another case. "I'll be right back," Rachel said, stepping away to handle the matter. Clara poured herself another cup of tea and sat by the window, gazing out at the city as it settled into evening. Her thoughts churned, anger at Nathan's betrayal, frustration at her own blindness, but also a growing sense of strength. She wasn't the naive woman who'd trusted him blindly. She was ready to fight for herself, for her future. The pain was still there, raw and sharp, but it was fueling her determination to move forward. When Rachel returned, they mapped out the next steps. The divorce would be filed the following day, and Rachel would handle all communication with Nathan and his lawyers. Clara felt a weight lift, knowing she had such a fierce ally in her corner. "Focus on yourself," Rachel advised. "Let him deal with the consequences of his actions." The divorce was filed promptly, and Nathan's reaction was predictable. He called Clara repeatedly, leaving voicemails that swung between anger and feigned remorse. He sent texts, begging for a chance to talk, claiming Jessica meant nothing, that it was a momentary mistake. Clara read his messages with a detached calm, seeing through his manipulation. Her silence was her power, and it unnerved him more than any argument could. Rachel shielded Clara from the barrage of calls from curious friends and acquaintances eager for gossip. She took charge of the legal proceedings, ensuring Clara didn't have to face Nathan directly. The apartment remained fully in Clara's name, as expected, but she couldn't bear to stay there. The memories were too painful, too raw. She decided to sell it, determined to start fresh. "It's not my home anymore," she told Rachel. "It's a reminder of his lies. I need a place that's mine, free of him." Rachel supported her decision, and the sale went smoothly, leaving Clara with enough money to begin anew. She moved into a new apartment, one she decorated with care, bright colors, soft textures, and personal touches that reflected her newfound independence. It was a space where she could heal, grow, and rediscover herself. Months later, a new man entered Clara's life. His name was Michael, a kind and genuine person who respected her past and valued her strength. At first, Clara was cautious, wary of repeating her mistakes. But Michael was patient, earning her trust with his quiet support and unwavering honesty. When she finally opened up about Nathan's betrayal, he listened without judgment, offering her a safe space to heal. Over time, Clara realized she was falling for him. With Michael, she felt at peace, secure in a way she hadn't thought possible. They married a year later in a small, intimate ceremony, surrounded by close friends and family. For the first time in a long time, Clara felt truly happy. Nathan became a distant memory, a painful lesson that taught her to value herself. She learned that betrayal, though devastating, was also an opportunity, a chance to rebuild, to let go of what no longer served her, and to create a life filled with authenticity and love. Her silence in the face of Nathan's deceit had been her greatest strength, allowing her to preserve her dignity and focus on her own path forward. With Michael by her side and Rachel's unwavering support, Clara embraced her new beginning, confident that the future was hers to shape.